Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. I already see quite a lot of people have joined on the line today, so firstly thank you all very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules today to join us. My name is Charles Green, I'm part of the marketing team here at Belatrix Software and I'm going to be your host today. Today we're going to be discussing best practices for Agile software development. And as well as that, we also want to discuss some of the common issues and the problems that many companies experience with Agile. While we're going to be presenting for much of the next 45 minutes, please feel free to ask us questions at any time. And you can do this either by typing into the chat box on the web conference, or you can also engage with us on Twitter, where we're going to be using the hashtag Scrum Master 2015. So again, if you have any specific questions you want to ask, we're going to be absolutely delighted to take them during the course of today's session. If we don't get a chance to answer all your questions, we'll be happy to follow up with you after this call as well. Very briefly then, just for those of you who on the line who are not familiar with Belatrix, we're a leading provider of software development services with expertise in both product and mobile application development. Everything we do is Agile, so we have a huge amount of expertise with the methodology. We've been there when things have worked well, but also when things haven't gone quite as they should and quite have gone to plan. And we've learned from those mistakes. We have delivery centers in Mendoza and Buenos Aires in Argentina, as well as Lima, Peru. The vast majority of our clients are in the US, so we also have expertise with so-called distributed Agile as well. So today I'm delighted to be joined by three of Belatrix's most senior Scrum Masters, Carla Bernal, Alejandro Reutemann, and Julieta Barinova. So now I'm going to ask each of you to very briefly introduce yourselves. Let's first start with Carla.
Thanks, Charles. Hello, this is Carla Bernal. I'm a computer system engineer, and I've been at IT market around 13 years, working as a QA analyst, product business analyst, and as a lead. I joined Belatrix 2 years ago as a Scrum Master and project lead, and well, I have broad experience working with customers and teams nearshore and offshore.
Thank you, Carla. Alejandro?
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Alejandra. I've been working here at Belatrix for the last 10 years. I started as an intern in the QA area, just being a student at the university. And at that moment we were just 17 employees, comparing with now that we are more than 300. I moved to the development area, and a couple of years later I started getting familiar with the Scrum Master concept and role. So in the last 3 years I started working as a Scrum Master, being part of different projects, teams, and clients.
Okay, thank you, Alejandro. And finally, Julieta?
Okay, hi everyone. Well, I have experience as software developer and product manager. In Belatrix, I started for over 8 years. I started as Scrum as QA. Then I started leading multiple projects as a Scrum Master. And then, well, as a Scrum Master, I have experience for over 5 years.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So really to kick off the discussion today, I want to first turn to, everyone knows that Agile has been a very hot topic in software development over the past few years. But despite the attention that it has received, many companies are still very much in the process of transitioning to Agile from more traditional methodologies. So I want to start the discussion today by asking our panel if you've come up against issues or concerns when organizations are considering starting on their Agile journey. And if you did, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Charles, with customers that are starting with Agile projects, they are often concerned about the risk of failure due to the use of unprecedented practices, at least for them, right? So also managers feel loss of control as on Agile projects we prioritize working software over comprehensive documentation. So in these cases, and on Michael Zahora's words, Kanban can be used as a Trojan horse or as a gateway drug, which theory states that softer drugs, in this case Kanban, can lead to harder drugs like Scrum, XP, DSDM, and so on. we have to consider that many organizations are not ready for radical overhauls. So for a company like this, Kanban can be a great place to start. In my case, I had the chance to work with a customer that uses Lean Kanban. However, we were facing some issues like lack of user stories information. We could not track the work in progress properly as we didn't have defined sprints. So we slightly suggest them to use Scrum by providing them concise and important information regarding that framework. So we started by defining sprints of 1 week, and after some months we can finally insert the retrospective meetings and also other ceremonies and processes that Scrum suggests.
Okay, fascinating. I think it's a very interesting analogy that you use there, and you call it a gateway drug. That there's a progress for companies, right? There's a transition period for them, and in some cases they may be better off starting with, say, a Kanban and then transitioning at a later time to Scrum.
Yes.
Ali?
Okay, in my case, the transition was different because they weren't really sure about the Agile, how it is. So they've heard something about it, but they weren't really sure how to implement it because they were used to work with traditional, so waterfall methodologies. So they thought that maybe it was just a question of having daily stand-ups and that's it, the Agile. So it's the current projects I'm working on now. So I felt that they were like scared or have a hard time thinking about how to implement it and to move from one methodology to the other one. So what we did, and it really worked, was to tell the client which are the benefits of using Scrum, making sure they understand all the terms, all the artifacts, everything that it's included there, the typical meetings, the people that will be involved, and also to make sure to let them understand that their availability and engagement are also crucial for this methodology. So, for instance, we started just having like quick meetings, like 5 to 10 minutes, just to let them know everything, all the concepts that has to do with Agile, with pictures, very, very quick one. Then we set a project for them using a tracking tool that we are really familiar with, and we have all the environment set here at Belatrix. So we just provide a scenario for them, an environment. They used to have all the requirements in an Excel file, so we took them and moved them from the Excel file to this tool, and we filled all the important fields that we thought that we will need. We showed them some examples from previous experiences of, I don't know, how to define story points, the definition of done, the workflows, and all the meetings. So we used previous experiences as examples. So in this way, they could see that it wasn't that difficult, that it didn't, they didn't need so much time or so much effort, but it was good to show them and to have everything done for them, at least the first weeks. So it was really good. We had really good results since after, I don't know, 4 to 5 weeks, they understood the process and they are now putting all the requirements in the tool instead of the Excel file and doing and participating very actively from the meetings that we set. So it was a really good practice for us.
Yeah. So excellent. It's really the case of you kind of almost coaching the client, as it were, really in some of the basics of Agile and leading them through some of the basic steps for Agile development, right?
Correct. Just to make some extra effort at the beginning, just as you said, as coaching them, and then it will just go by their own.
Okay, excellent. And Julieta?
Okay, I wanted to close the idea. Well, just talking about some tips regarding what Alejandro and Carla comment. So just to make sure, as Ale and Carla mentioned, so first tell the client which are the benefits of using Scrum or any Agile methodology. Make sure that they understand the terms, the typical meetings, the people, or the artifacts everything that is related with Agile. Second, let the client know that the data availability and enhancement are crucial to have it work. Another thing to have in mind is provide an appropriate Agile Scrum information, because sometimes we start working in Agile but we don't provide them documentations about the project or also about the about how the Agile works. You also can provide some examples, tools to show some project that you worked in the past and some experience that you can share. Everything is going to be very helpful when you start with the clients at the scratch. Also suggest to start with a small sprint on future. Sometimes it's very useful if you can start just planning small sprints and try to see if the methodology can work or not for the client. Sometimes works, sometimes not, so you can change the decision being while you are working in the first sprint. And the last one is just suggest to start maybe with Kanban. As Carla mentioned, Kanban is probably is good when you don't have previous experience working with any other Agile methodology. And then you can also work with the client to have a very good or good transitions to a Scrum. That is probably the methodology that we suggest when we work in Agile. So, well, these are the tips that I can talk about this topic.
Okay, thank you. So moving on then, so if we consider the position of one particular organization, they've decided now to they've overcome some of their concerns about Agile and they've decided to start implementing Agile. Then one of the initial things that they're going to be doing is going to be starting with planning. And so now I want to turn the discussion over to discuss some of the common mistakes that teams make in planning.
Well, I will start. Well, one of the things that's when we talk about planning is I have in mind is estimation. When working in different projects and being involved in different planning, one of the hard things to have is the estimations. Many people are feel very bad or fear when they start doing estimation during the planning meeting. In general, teams often undercommit or pad their estimation. Sometimes do it to fear or being responsible or maybe blame for a failure. So what I did when I was in this kind of situations, I tried to foster an environment of trust, such as that the team can explore the causes of or trying to avoid finger pointing the people. That sometimes, because when you are trying to I don't know, be focused on the people and try to say, okay, please let me know your estimation. It's good if you can have a conversation with them and discuss about which are going to be the sprint goal. What if they previously have an analysis about the story or the task that they have assigned. So the tip is help you find the true upper limit of the velocity. This is one of the things that I suggest. Another thing that is good, or we need to have in mind as a Scrum Master, that estimating size and also the scope when you are starting an Agile project is very difficult. Especially when we have a new team that they don't have experience before working in this kind of methodology. So one of the suggestions that I always make to my people is please keep calm. Estimation also and also transmit the same message to the client. Keep calm. Estimation will become easier with time. Also because sometimes we need to have one or two sprints trying to test what is the estimation of the user stories or the component that need to be developed, but we need time. Just try as I mentioned before, 2 or 3 sprints, and then we are testing how the team can work as a team with this kind of when we start a new project. An addition that is I also suggest is before planning is to have pre-planning or grooming meeting, depend of the project how we call it. That are a very good meeting for determine which are the or how many stories are going to be included for next sprint. It's just a quick conversation that we can have with the pro owner or technical leads and team to discuss which are going to be the stories and the requirement that we need to have in mind for next sprint. To have a very good analysis before to start the sprint are very useful for estimations and for starting the planning and having in mind which are going to be the goal for the sprint.
Okay, thank you, Julieta. I think you mentioned that estimation is really tough, and it's clearly something which a lot of companies struggle with. And actually, we just received a question from the audience, particularly regarding estimations, actually. And the question from the listener is, how do you close the gap between story points and hours of work? For example, the team estimates a story to be 8 points, and it takes 24 hours of work. But the next time the team estimates a different story at 8 points, but it only takes 2 hours. So how do you start to close that gap between the story points and the hours of work?
Well, this is Alejandra. I think that it's a learning process, as Julieta was mentioning. It will take time to make sure how many points a story will have. So maybe we can start thinking that maybe 1 point, as the example says, it will be 3 hours, but I don't know, it will change because at the beginning you are not really familiar with the business, with the architecture, or with all the technical details, and also the team. You are not really know how the team works. There could be new team members with different roles, with different personalities. So it will take some time to make sure that you are using the correct points, and it can change. For me, it will change. So across time, because next time, I don't know, for the same complexity, you will take less time. So it's a process, and you are able to change it and just to adapt to the new times.
Mm-hmm. And also, I will add just one thing. That is good if when you are putting points to the stories based on the complexity, it's good if you can have pro owners, the team, and also a technical lead. That is good if they can, because sometimes technical lead or lead, I don't know what is the plan of the project, they have a very good vision about how the effort is good for is necessary for the story, so they can help to put points to one story, because sometimes we have one developer or say, okay, I think that we have 8 points for that story, but then it's good, and then probably next sprint is not a very good estimation or points. So it's good if you can involve QA, technical lead, and developer together for pointing the stories, because it's a conversation and everyone can have suggestions. It's good. So as just close my idea, developers, technical lead, and pro owner are very good for make a very good estimation for stories.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. As you said, particularly with new pieces of work, it is particularly challenging. Just one other question from the audience related to that. And they're asking about using hours instead of story points as an estimation measure unit. Do you have an opinion on that?
Using hours instead of
story points.
Well, it's dependent of projects. For me, there are different concepts. You are you have, for example, user story, if we call user story a requirement, and you say, well, I think that we have 8 points for user story, and then the hour is the points are just for the velocity, and then hour is just for task. For example, I have a user story and I have different tasks for the user stories. So the stories you can put in points, but the tasks sometimes better if we can put in hours. There are different. So points means sometimes the how difficult is for the team, yeah. But it depends. You can use points an hour. In my case, I prefer to use points for user story, an hour for task. I don't know if Carla or Alejandra have another things to
Yes,
talk about.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you. So it's easier to estimate according to the effort and not the hours. So you could be, I don't know, wrong easily with hours. So it's better to think about how complex a story is and to compare it just with another one about complexity, no hours. So I totally agree.
Yeah, I totally agree with both girls, because at the end, when the guys are working on the task, not on the user stories, and they have to propose how many hours they will invest doing their assignments. Right.
Excellent, thank you. But I would notice to note to the audience, we are getting a lot of questions coming in about Agile. We are going to do our best to take these during the course of the presentation. We'll try to deal with them when they come up in when they're most appropriate for the presentation, and we've also got some time at the end. So I think at the moment we're going to carry on, but please do keep these questions coming again in the chat or via Twitter, and we'll do our best to get to each of those questions during the course of the presentation. So moving on then, talking about some of the mistakes that you can make during planning. We've spoken here about estimation and some of the challenges with estimation. What about some of the other mistakes that you see?
Okay, another mistake that I typically see and I've noticed is that sometimes we spend the whole day in plannings. They tend to be like 3 to 4 hours planning, estimating tasks and stories, and we miss to define the sprint goal, or maybe just to ask ourselves why those stories are being included in the sprint and why they are important. So it's really, really important to have the visibility of the roadmap, maybe of the project roadmap, if not, and better if you could see the sprint roadmap. So to ask the product owner the business value that story or that new functionality will have, how it will impact to the business. So having this in mind, the whole team can do a better work because they can think about different scenarios because they are familiar with the business, so they could think some possible impacts that the changes could have, and also to add value because they could think about different options to do it and suggest different ways to do it. So having a bigger picture, it's very, very important for the team to add value and not just to do and to think about what the product owner has said, because sometimes he or she doesn't really know. So maybe she can have a barely idea, but while going deeper, there could be more scenarios or things to have in mind. So it's not really common that the client share it. So if he doesn't, ask for it because it's really a good practice.
Okay, thank you. And Carla, what about in your experience?
Yeah, another common mistakes about definition of done. Sometimes the customer does not provide enough information related to the user stories. And another common mistake is that teams do not ask to the customer to provide detailed information because of fear. So in this case, well, for customers, the definition of done could mean having all sprints features deployed in prod. However, for devs team, done could mean having all features ready for test, right? So everybody has to keep in mind that definition of done must be defined at the beginning of each sprint. We have to make sure that everybody, I mean, the customer, the teams, QA, dev, understand what done will mean for that sprint.
Okay, thank you. So we've seen some of these common mistakes that we often face when we're particularly for planning agile projects. Ali, what would be some of your top tips then for planning? Alejandro?
I'm here. So one of the tips could be to be proactive. Don't wait the client, the pro owner, to provide all the details at the beginning, because as I said, sometimes they don't really know. So raise a red flag when questions come out or when some scenarios are missing. Send emails, call the client. So feel confident to do it, because it will help to have a better understanding of the whole story. Another one is to push the pro owner to have user studies ready before the pre-planning. So in this way, the team can get together to review them, to analyze them, and to prepare questions. So once the pre-planning is done, it will be more productive, because questions will be there and they can discuss with the pro owners and everyone there, that sometimes they are not always available. So try to do it. Try to force the pro owner to do that. Another one is to allow the team to fail in the estimation. I mean, as we were talking some minutes ago, it's very difficult to do a proper estimate. So don't panic. Just allow them to fail, and when the project still goes, and with time, it will get better. So just give them the permission to do it. Another one is try to not accept deadlines for future stories. If you are not really sure how complex they will be, or if the team will know how quickly they can complete the work. So try to stop the client and not commit to deadlines that you are not really sure that you will be able to meet. Another one is that it's really, really important to have visibility of the roadmap. So as I mentioned, if the client doesn't share it, try to ask for it, because it makes the difference to know why the functionality is being done. And finally, have in mind that the definition of done needs to be consistent and unique across the team, with the client, of course.
Okay, super. And actually, we have another question from our audience, which I'd like to get to now. And this question is relatively general, so I guess it'll be dependent a little bit on your perspective. But the question is, how do you manage the issues between agile development, which is based on Scrum, some of the issues which typically come up?
Okay, I think I can answer this question. Well, you have many tools that we can use for managing issues in Agile. For example, I can mention Jira, that Jira have a plugin that is named WinHooper, that is give you the possibility to manage different issues. You can cover all the cycle of the Scrum, for example, with this plugin. Also, well, Rally also have another plugin or add-ons that can provide this the possibility to manage the different phases of the Scrum. So depending on the tool, you have you can have another open or free tools, open source tools that you can download, that always you have different plugins for Agiles. In general, you can call Agile plugins for the different tools. But if you are asking me for suggestion, I always prefer Jira and GitHub.
Yeah, I also used version 1 that is good as well. I really liked it. It's very similar to Jira. And the other one that clients use a lot is TFS, Team Foundation Server, that it comes with Visual Studio. I particularly don't really like it. It's not so friendly, but a lot of clients use them also.
Just to add some things to what the girls just said. In Scrum, you have the final sprint, right? At the beginning of the sprint, the team and the customer get to a definition of what or how many user stories and tasks they are committed to deploy or to work on. So it's in the way some issues arise, and some of them are very critical for the customer to have at the end of that sprint. You have to deal with the customers in order to maybe remove some user stories or tasks that you're supposed to work during that sprint in order to put that new critical issue that the customer wants to be or have at the end of the sprint.
Excellent, thank you. So again, I would remind everyone on the audience today to keep your questions coming. Again, you can see the hashtag on Twitter there, Scrum Master 2015. So please feel free to tweet us your questions or your thoughts, your comments, and also, of course, on the chat on the web conference as well. But moving on then, I want to talk about, we talked a little bit about the transition period to Agile. We were talking a bit about the planning and how to effectively plan for your Agile project. So once you've done all that, you're now working in Agile. What do you do then if in your team you have some low-performing individuals? How do you work with them? How do you raise their performance? How do you deal with some of these individuals who are not perhaps performing at the same level as some of the other people in the team? Julieta?
Okay, yeah, good question. Well, I have a situation with one or probably some member of my team that they have low performance. Also with serious problem for working in teams that, well, I think that is a common situations when you are working in teams. One of the things that when I detect a low performance, I try to implement daily meeting with the people the person that is having this problem. So just to figure out what is the problem that he or her might be facing. So sometimes when we are in planning or Scrum or any meeting for any Agile meeting, sometimes people don't ask for help, or because sometimes they don't feel comfortable, or they feel that they are not they don't have the power for asking or for raising a flag. So what I did, and it's worked for me, is to have separate meeting, probably can be daily meeting, just to figure out what is the problem. Because so I could see that we have a very good result, because I could detect what is the problem with that person, and then have another meeting if the problem is the team, another meeting with the whole team, just to discuss what are the problems that this person is having. Another thing that's to have in mind is, but we need to remember that we never make the mistake to talk with this person or the person that is having the low performance in public. Never point this person in public. We need to have in mind that probably this person that is having the problem sometimes have some problems, personal, in work, I don't know, it doesn't matter, but we need have separate meeting with him to figure out the problem. Is for me is work for me to detect this kind of problems.
Okay, and Alejandro?
Yeah, I have some different situation where we are maybe asking ourselves why they are having low performance, and we are missing that maybe the team member could not feel comfortable with the assignment or the tasks that he or she has to do. So maybe the task is not challenging enough, or it's boring for that person, or even it's not the area that he would prefer to be. So we have here different things to do. So development, QA, design, different areas. So maybe he's working as a developer, but he would like to be a QA. So it's really important to ask him or her how he feels, which interests he has, and where he'd like to be. Maybe to ask him where he sees himself in a long period of time. So take some time, invest some time on this, because it's really important to have that person motivated, and that could be the main reason of his low performance, because he's boring or he's not, I don't know, enthusiastic with the task. So try to make sure that he's in the correct position.
Mm-hmm. Right, you've raised a range of different issues, and it's clearly often a very complex situation when you have someone who's not performing as well. So, Carla, what would be then some of the top tips that you would advise the audience?
Yeah, have periodical meetings to follow up team members' performance. It could be quarterly or monthly. Ask for a senior peer to work along with that member in order to improve his or her performance. And while she or he is keeping the team pace, assign him or her less tasks. Propose trainings according to his needs and responsibilities. Assign tasks that make him comfortable. Propose activities outside the company, like lunch or maybe some sports. Never say low performance in public. As a leader, you should have private conversation with that member who is having troubles with the team or with the work.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So moving on then, I now want to look at perhaps one of the most critical parts actually for Agile development, and that is the retrospective. So now I want to talk to the panel about what are some of the best practices for having successful retrospectives. But perhaps first you can explain exactly what is a retrospective.
Okay, so a retrospective is a meeting that we usually do at the end of the sprint. So it has to be done at that moment, but some teams miss to have it, and it's really important to do it. So what do you do at that meeting? You ask basically 3 questions: that what went well in that sprint, what didn't go so well, and what could be improved. So there are 3 questions that are really important to improve as a team. So it's a good opportunity for the team to express themselves, to let the client know if he's present, or maybe the rest of the team, maybe there could be some problems within the team. So it's a short meeting, but it's really important to have it. So before going to maybe the practices to do it, that maybe Julieta or Carla can talk to it, I would like to mention that there are some cases where the client is not available, or he can say that he won't have time to do it, so the team tend not to do it. But I would suggest to have it with the team, maybe locally in an informal meeting, but try to have it. So you can ask the team, and maybe it's good because they feel comfortable, the client is not there, so they can express themselves better, and try to let them know that it's very important, the information that they could provide, that the idea is to improve and to have all the work better. So as a Scrum Master, their responsibility will be to share that with the client, maybe a quick chat or maybe an email, to share it with them and to show him how the team feels and what things can be improved. They could be really small changes that could improve a lot of things. So I would suggest to have it with or without the client.
Okay, and Julieta? Julieta?
Could you hear me? Yeah, sorry, I was mute. Well, in my case, as Ali mentioned, retrospective are great meeting at the end of the sprints, but sometimes I have experience working in project that when we have a retrospective, they are very good. Everyone has the possibility to talk about things that went well, things that were bad, but we just close the retrospective meeting and then start with next sprint. And no conclusion, no action plans. This kind of meeting doesn't work. So what I suggest working in a project that that's really work is when you are thinking or when you are exposing things that went bad, just suggest an action plan and say, okay, I think that this was wrong in this sprint, and I suggest an action plan for fix it, and I estimate what many sprint or hours and the solution that for fix it. So it really work is because you are not just saying the things that went well and went wrong, you are just putting an action plan. But as you as a Scrum Master, you have another responsibility to follow up across the different sprint all the actions plan that comes from retrospective, and make sure if people just estimate to fix the problem in the times in one time, you need to make sure that is fixed. So as conclusion is good retrospective, but if you don't have an action plan, if you are not following the or reviewing which are the things that went wrong in the previous sprint, in next sprint, this kind of retrospective doesn't work. So make sure to have an action plan and review, and when you start a new sprint, review all the goals that you made in the previous sprint and make sure that people are working to improve the things that went wrong.
Well, another suggestion to have successful retrospective meetings is to open them highlighting that the main purpose of it is not to point each other defects. Ensure that everybody understands that this is the chance to talk about things that can be improved by each one, and also talk about things that went well that we should keep in the following sprints. So whenever the retrospective takes a different direction, the Scrum Master should stop that and redirect it to their main purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very critical. It can be very easy for people to start criticizing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely need to change the atmosphere and the context of the meeting.
Okay.
So what are some of the Alejandro? What are some of the top tips that you would have then for a retrospective?
Okay, so try to do the retrospective meetings, do the effort to have them regardless the client presence, and make sure to provide a summary to the team and to the client. Also make sure you review the items from the previous retrospective so the team can see the progress and that some things are being done to have that work. Additional thing is to make sure that the team members define the action plans for any item that could be improved, so they could see the steps to do it and that something will be done for making it work. And finally, ensure that everybody understands that this is a chance to talk about things that can be improved. So encourage the team to talk and to feel comfortable and to be sincere, because the goal is to improve.
Thank you. So moving on then, and really in the spirit of having a successful retrospective, I now want to ask the Scrum Masters, ask our panel today, about what was their biggest mistake so far as a Scrum Master, and what would they perhaps do differently in the future. Perhaps let's start with Julieta. Maybe you're mute again.
Yeah, I am here. Okay, well, one of the, I think that the biggest mistake that I made was try to manage the team. Because, well, I work many years in traditional methodologies when you have the traditional structure, when you have a lead and you are always controlling what the team is doing. And what I did that was really bad for the team is trying to controlling them, principally their estimation, what they are doing, try to be involved in the definition of the sprint goal, instead of try to be a Scrum Master. That is a different definition of the lead, of the traditional lead, right? So for me was my big mistake, because it was hard for me to understand what is the role of the Scrum Master. I think that is a common mistake when you are transitioning between from one methodology for the traditional methodology to Agile methodologies. I understood that you need your role is just facilitate that the team to make decisions and remove impediments. One concept that I understood after my mistake was that a team is, as many books of Agile mention, is self-organized. Just you need to provide the team or push the team to make the decisions. Is one I always suggest to when we are probably trying to teach new Scrum Master to have in mind that you are not a lead, you are a Scrum Master, you are part of the team, but you never need to control what the team is doing, and you just need to facilitate your team to achieve the goal.
Thank you. Moving to Carla.
Yeah, you know that one of our main purposes as Scrum Master is to equally trust in the whole team member, empower them in order to let them work and manage their own time. So you expect everybody to be honest with the team, the customer, and the Scrum Master always, but not everybody is honest with you, right? So some people take that liberty in order to focus on different things or personal issues than work. So that kind of irresponsibility drives to delays on due dates and customer dissatisfaction. So I could say that my biggest mistake as a Scrum Master was not to identify each team member's shortcomings or weak points.
Thank you. And finally, Alejandro?
Okay, so as giving some tips for them, just summarizing what the girls have told. So never try to manage the team, and that's the key question. Remember that the team should be self-organized. So just focus on removing impediments that they could have and push them to take decisions, but not take, as a Scrum Master, decisions for them. And the other one was is to keep in mind that not everyone has the same maturity or responsibility in the team. So keep an eye on that and make sure that you are giving responsibility to the person that could be responsible enough to do it. So don't forget that.
Okay, thank you. So now moving on, really to the last question which we have for today before we open up for Q&A to end off this webinar. But first I want to firstly get quite briefly to what are some of the top best practices would you state you have for being a successful Scrum Master? And let's start with Carla.
Yeah. Well, you have to encourage your team to trust on their knowledge and experience. And in the same way, you have to encourage them to ask for help whenever they need. Make them understand that there is no problem if someone don't have the complete knowledge for a specific tool or any business definition.
Okay. And Alejandro?
Okay, so one important thing that Scrum Master can forget is to invest time on team members. So try to make sure they get along This is so important. It will make them to naturally be more collaborative between them. They will help each other to meet the sprint goal and to add value. So whenever they are free, they will be happy to help the other one to finish with the task and to reach the goal of the sprint. And also, since in our case we have the client in United States, so they are far from us, they don't see us in our daily work, it's very important to make sure that the client knows each of the team members of the team. I have the opportunity to work in some teams where the same person was the responsible of performing the demos. He was the technical lead, so he was always answering the questions or asking the questions, or the one who talked in the planning meetings. So the client has that person as the only person in the team. So it could be frustrating for the rest of the team, and it's not that good that the client knows just one person. So try to make effort to have everybody participates in every meeting. Try to distribute the work, and maybe assign different people for the demos at the end of every sprint to perform it different people so the client can know them just because of the distance problem. It's also very important.
Okay, thank you. And Julieta?
Okay, the last one, I think. One thing to have in consideration is sometimes we have problems with or conflicts sometimes with when we have development teams and product owners, principally in the definition of done or when we are defining the sprint goal. You as a Scrum Master need to be very strong or to have a strong participation in this kind of conversation, principally when we are planning and we are defining which are going to be the stories that are going to be included in the sprint. Because you will have the development side that they are thinking just in technical aspect, and then you have the other side that you have product owners that they are thinking business role and just goal. So sometimes you will find that they will probably have some conflict that you need to fix. You need to mediate between them and try to motivate a lot of meeting to discuss and about which are the technical aspect to have in mind, and then which are the business aspect that pro owners suggest. Sometimes pro owners don't understand that some features are not technically implementable, and in this case the conflict starts. So my suggestion is always be involved in this kind of conversation. Make sure if we have this kind of problem, we need to have meetings, discuss about the technical aspect, and always try to involve in this conversation to our product owners. And then, just to close this idea, I will talk some tips that are very useful. That's first, as Carla mentioned, take advantages of daily meeting and also one-to-one meeting to encourage the team members ask for help or raise the flag. As Ale mentioned, make sure to try to invest time in people. And also encourage everybody to participate in meeting, mails, all the Agile meetings that are included in the process. And the last one that I mentioned before, try to be strong on mediating in the general conflict of defining the goal between development team and product owners.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Well, that actually brings us to the conclusion of the more formal part of the presentation. And now we have a few minutes before the top of the hour to take questions. But we got a question slightly earlier during the presentation, which I want to take to start with. But for everyone else, do feel free to ask us on the chat or via Twitter You see the hashtag there on the top left-hand side of the screen. But firstly, the question is, why do we suggest transitioning to Scrum and not to other methodologies such as Lean, for example?
Yeah, first of all, we have to understand that Scrum is a framework and Agile is a methodology. And under Agile, we have Scrum, XP, TDD, DSDM, among other. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is that Kanban or Lean Kanban born in Toyota company, which is a manufacturer company. So what we were trying to say is that Kanban can be used as a start to introduce customers to Agile methodologies. No matter which framework you use or select, the things that are going to strike your decisions on it will depend on the involved of the customer, the time that he compromised, the knowledge about the framework, and also the time and the knowledge of your team, right? It's not that we have to force everybody to use Scrum or to use DSDM. It will depend on their knowledge and the time they're compromised to be there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's also definitely worthwhile mentioning that for particular companies which aren't so familiar with Agile methodologies or other methodologies, that it's important to really define what you mean by Scrum. And like when you actually come to implementing it, there are often different modifications that you can make. Different service providers will have different interpretations of those particular methodologies in different circumstances. We also have another question, which is, let me just find it. In the question we spoke earlier in the presentation about retrospectives, and the question is, what if in many retrospectives we didn't do the action items?
So maybe I was thinking that the action items maybe are not well defined, or maybe they were not possible to do. So it's really important to make sure that all the action items that you are thinking to do or to perform are possible to be done. So try to assign people to set deadlines and just that, to make sure that they will be done by that date. Because if not, retrospectives will be senseless. So it's the Scrum Master responsibility to work on this, on the action items, to make the people really feel responsible of the items, the actions that they will need to do. So maybe it's a question of not defining the action items well, or that they are not possible to be done.
Okay, thank you. And I think we are very much close to the top of the hour, but we have just one final question which I'd like to take from the audience, and that's asking about what tools we typically use for Scrum management here at Belatrix.
Well, the most common is Jira.
Yeah, I think we already mentioned them. I think it was Jira, TFS, version 1, the ones that
we can use also Rally. There are a lot of tools that we can use for Agile. I don't know if is the question.
And if you're looking for an open source tool, you have Trello, Target, and Kanbanize.
Okay, thank you. Well, we don't have any further questions at this time, and I see, as I mentioned, we are right at the very top of the hour, so I would like to take this opportunity to say a very big thank you to our panelists today for sharing their expertise with us, and also a big thank you to our audience for taking the time to listen. I hope it's been of interest. I hope it's perhaps sparked some ideas, some new thoughts for you. If you have any further questions that you would like to ask us, then please feel free to reach out to us. This is really Agile development. It's really our passion here at Belatrix is what we do every day. So we love to talk about it. We love to share our expertise. So please feel free to reach out to us. If you would like to understand how perhaps Belatrix can help you in your particular companies, again, feel free to reach out to us. we'll be more than happy to enter into those conversations. With that, I would like to say many thanks again to everyone, and have a good rest of the day.